2 years after the Convergence War, Captain Sarah Chin stood in the newly constructed Interspecies Coordination Institute on Luna, watching the latest group of mixed-species cadets tackle their final examination. Through the observation deck's transparent walls, Earth hung in the star field like a blue and white jewel, its surface showing the green patches where Zephyrian terraforming techniques had reversed centuries of industrial damage. The examination scenario below presented challenges that would have been impossible to imagine before the war. Cadets from 17 different species worked together to coordinate disaster relief on a simulated world where multiple crises demanded simultaneous response. Geological instability required Vorthack engineering patience. Atmospheric contamination needed Zephyrian energy manipulation. Civilian evacuation called for Marlock pack coordination and Kethka aerial mobility. At the center of it all, human cadets served as coordination facilitators, not commanding other species, but helping them discover how their different capabilities could work together most effectively. Lieutenant Kila, 9, now an instructor despite her young age, padded across the observation deck to join Sarah's position. The Marlock's silver-gray fur showed the faint scarring that marked veterans of the Convergence conflict, but her eyes held the bright intelligence that had made her such an effective student. Final assessment results? Sarah asked, not taking her eyes off the exercise below. Coordination efficiency 94%. Kila, 9 reported in Federation standard that had become flawless through constant practice. Response time improvement of 67% over single-species baseline. Casualty prevention index exceeds Academy records. Sarah nodded, noting how the mixed-species teams moved with fluid precision that made their coordination appear effortless, each being contributed according to their strengths while adapting to support their teammates' efforts. It was coordination that preserved individuality while achieving unity, the principle that had won the war and was now reshaping galactic civilization. Instructor Chun, a new voice called from the observation deck's entrance. Sarah turned to see Admiral Korthvier approaching, accompanied by a figure she didn't immediately recognize. The newcomer stood nearly 3 meters tall, its form combining characteristics from multiple convergent species into something that looked almost familiar. Sarah realized she was looking at one of the Convergence observers who had remained to study Federation coordination techniques. Admiral, Sarah acknowledged with appropriate respect, though the rigid formality of their early relationship had long since evolved into something warmer. Observer Synthesis 7. The Convergence being moved with the careful precision that characterized its species, but Sarah had learned to recognize individual personality traits even in their standardized forms. Synthesis 7 had been among the first observers to request assignment to the Coordination Institute and had shown remarkable adaptation to Federation diversity principles. Captain Chun, Synthesis 7 spoke in the harmonic tones that its species used for formal communication. Request permission to address development concerns regarding new integration protocols. Sarah gestured toward the observation lounge, where comfortable seating accommodated multiple species anatomy. As they settled into position, she noticed that Synthesis 7 had configured its form to more closely resemble Federation physiological standards, a sign of adaptation that would have been impossible before the war. The integration protocol's work, Admiral Korthvier, began without preamble. Disaster response times have improved by factors of 10. Scientific collaboration produces results that no single species could achieve. Economic cooperation generates prosperity levels that exceed all historical records. But, Sarah prompted, sensing the underlying concern in the Admiral's tone. The Outer Rim colonies report increasing numbers of beings who identify as post-species, Synthesis 7 explained. Individuals who reject traditional species identity in favor of coordination group membership. The phenomenon shows accelerating growth rates. Sarah considered the implications. Post-species identification wasn't unprecedented. The coordination training had always emphasized shared purpose over evolutionary heritage. But galaxy-wide adoption suggested changes that went beyond military doctrine. Assessment of cultural impact? She asked. Admiral Korthvier activated a holographic display showing demographic data from across Federation space. 43% of beings under 30 standard years identify primarily with their coordination group rather than their birth species. Mixed species communities show population growth rates exceeding traditional settlements by substantial margins. The data painted a picture of fundamental social transformation. Young beings throughout the galaxy were choosing to live and work in mixed species communities that prioritized coordination capabilities over evolutionary heritage. Traditional species boundaries were dissolving in favor of associations based on shared values and complementary abilities. Convergence analysis suggests this represents natural evolution of Federation social structure. Synthesis, 7 added. Cooperation-based identity superseding competition-based identity. However, traditional species leadership expresses concern regarding cultural preservation. Sarah looked down at the examination exercise, where a mixed species team had just achieved perfect coordination in resolving a simulated catastrophe. Marlock cubs worked alongside Vorthack engineers while Aquarian coordinators managed Kethka aerial operations. To them, species differences were simply different tools for achieving shared objectives. They're not losing their cultural identities, she realized. They're expanding them. The observation proved accurate when examined in detail. Post-species communities preserve the best elements of each member culture while creating new traditions that incorporated multiple perspectives. Marlock pack instincts influenced Vorthack engineering patience, while Aquarian flexibility adapted Kethka aerial awareness to ground-based applications. The coordination principles are becoming cultural principles, Admiral Korth VA observed. Unity through diversity extending beyond military applications. A soft chime announced the completion of the examination exercise below. The mixed species cadet teams had achieved results that surpassed all previous records, but, more importantly, they had demonstrated the easy cooperation that characterized their generation. For them, working with beings from different species was as natural as breathing. Lieutenant Keela, 9 activated the communication system to address the successful cadets. Examination complete. Certification achieved for all coordination teams. Report to advancement ceremonies at 1,400 hours. As the cadets dispersed, Sarah noticed their behavior patterns. Instead of segregating by species as previous generations had done, they formed mixed groups based on friendships and shared interests. A Marlock cub discussed technical innovations with a Zephyrian engineer, while an Aquarian strategist planned recreational activities with a Kethka pilot. The cubs broke from the pack, Sarah murmured, remembering Keela 9's words from their academy days. But they didn't run away. They learned to build bigger packs. Observer Synthesis 7's form shifted into configurations that Sarah had learned indicated curiosity among convergence beings. Human perspective on social evolution suggests optimization through voluntary association rather than biological modification. This approach preserves individual capability while enhancing collective function. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Federation Command. The message bore priority encryption that indicated crisis-level importance. All senior staff report to emergency briefing immediately. Admiral Korth VA read from her personal display. Contact situation developing at Galactic Rim. Unknown civilization requesting coordination assistance. The briefing chamber beneath the Institute buzzed with controlled urgency as senior staff from across the Federation assembled virtually. The main display showed long-range sensor readings from the galactic edge, where deep space monitors had detected something unprecedented. Fleet Admiral Chinka appeared on the communication screen, her 4 arms moving in patterns that indicated extreme concern. 72 hours ago, Federation monitors detected distress signals from beyond galactic boundaries. The signals use mathematical principles consistent with advanced civilization, but employ no known communication protocols. The display shifted to show analysis of the mysterious transmissions. Complex mathematical structures suggested intelligence of extraordinary capability, but the underlying message remained incomprehensible despite extensive decryption attempts. 6 hours ago, the signal source approached our galaxy and began attempting direct contact, the fleet admiral continued. Initial communications suggest a civilization facing extinction-level crisis. They specifically request assistance from the coordination builders. a designation that appears to reference recent Federation developments. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. Word of Federation coordination techniques had apparently spread beyond galactic boundaries, reaching civilizations that faced challenges no individual species could overcome. Assessment of contact capabilities and intentions? Admiral Korthva requested. Peaceful contact confirmed. Technology levels exceed Federation standards by substantial margins. However, their requests suggest they face problems that superior technology cannot solve. Fleet Admiral Chinka's image shifted to show new data. Initial translation indicates their civilization achieved unity through conscious evolution, voluntary biological modification to create optimal beings for specific functions. The implications became clear immediately. The approaching civilization had followed the convergence path, optimization through standardization. But, unlike the convergence, they had discovered that some problems required diversity rather than uniformity. They created specialists so refined for specific functions that they lost general adaptability, Sarah realized. Now they face challenges that require flexible response, and they can't adapt because they've eliminated the variations that flexibility requires. Correct assessment. Confirmed synthesis. 7. Convergence analysis indicates parallel developmental patterns. Optimization through specialization creates capabilities, but eliminates alternatives. When novel challenges arise, specialized beings cannot develop novel responses. The alien civilization had perfected themselves into an evolutionary dead end. Each being was supremely capable within narrow parameters, but helpless when faced with problems outside their designed function. They had achieved efficiency at the cost of adaptability. Contact timeline. Sarah asked. 18 standard hours, Fleet Admiral Chinka replied. They request immediate consultation regarding coordination techniques that preserve individual variation while achieving collective capability. Federation response team required for direct cultural exchange. The assembled staff exchanged glances that carried volumes of meaning. The approaching aliens represented the most advanced civilization ever encountered, but they were asking for help with problems that Federation beings considered basic social skills. I volunteer for the contact team, Sarah announced, surprising herself with the immediacy of her decision. Concurred, Admiral Korthva agreed. Captain Chun will lead Federation contact protocols. Coordination Institute personnel authorized for cultural exchange mission. As the briefing dispersed, Sarah found herself surrounded by volunteers for the contact mission. Lieutenant Keela, 9, stepped forward first, her silver-gray fur bristling with excitement. Human began training. Now cubs teach new species coordination principles. Observer synthesis. 7 approached with the careful movements that characterized formal requests among convergence beings. Request permission to join contact mission. Convergence perspective may provide valuable insights for specialized species interaction. Others followed. Korvac Prime representing Vorthak engineering patience, Shriek, 7 offering Kethka aerial reconnaissance capabilities, and representatives from dozens of species whose diverse perspectives had proven valuable in previous. The first helicopter arrived 6 hours after Marcus activated the beacon. He heard the rotors long before he saw the aircraft, a military transport that landed in the field behind the cottage with practiced precision. 8 people emerged, dressed in civilian clothes, but moving with military coordination. Their leader, a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and sharp eyes, approached the cottage while the others began unloading equipment. Marcus Chun, she called out as she reached the door. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Project Beacon Coordinator. We need to talk. Marcus had spent the past 6 hours reading everything he could find in his grandfather's files. He knew that Dr. Mitchell was one of 3 senior coordinators who managed the global beacon network. He also knew that she had been working with his grandfather for over 20 years, making her one of the few people who fully understood what was happening. The vessel will arrive in 8 hours, Dr. Mitchell said without preamble as she entered the cottage. We're reading approach vectors that suggest they're heading for this exact location. Your grandfather's lighthouse isn't just a monitoring station. It's apparently where they've been planning to make contact all along. Marcus gestured to the array of computer equipment around them. I activated the beacon like the protocols said. But I don't understand most of this equipment, and I definitely don't understand what I'm supposed to do when aliens actually arrive. Dr. Mitchell moved to the main computer terminal and began checking data displays with the familiarity of someone who had done this many times before. Your grandfather spent 60 years learning to communicate with them. The aliens have been sending increasingly detailed messages about their approach, their intentions, and their requirements for peaceful contact. David was our best interpreter for their communication protocols. She turned to Marcus with an expression that mixed sympathy with urgency. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to train a replacement. We're going to have to figure this out together, and we're going to have to do it very quickly. The other members of Dr. Mitchell's team had entered the cottage and were setting up additional equipment. Marcus recognized some of the devices as military communication gear, but others looked as advanced as anything his grandfather had hidden in the basement. The aliens call themselves the Keepers, Dr. Mitchell explained as she pulled up files on the main screen. They've been monitoring human development for several centuries, but they've never made direct contact. According to our analysis of their communications, they intervene only when a species reaches what they call a critical transition point. A moment when that species either learns to manage its technological development responsibly or destroys itself. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean wind. And they think humanity has reached that point? 3 months ago, they sent a message indicating that human technological development has exceeded their safety parameters. We've developed too much destructive capability without developing the wisdom to use it responsibly. They're coming to evaluate whether humanity should be allowed to continue its current path, or whether intervention is necessary. Dr. Mitchell showed Marcus a series of translated alien communications that painted an increasingly concerning picture. The Keepers had been tracking human nuclear weapons development, environmental destruction, space exploration capabilities, and what they called social cohesion factors. By their measurements, humanity was approaching a point where it could become a threat to other intelligent species in the galaxy. The good news, Dr. Mitchell continued, is that they're willing to consider alternatives to direct intervention. They've spent 60 years evaluating our species, and they've identified humans who demonstrate what they call evolved consciousness. People who understand the bigger picture and can think beyond immediate tribal interests. My grandfather was one of those people. David was their primary contact for 6 decades. They trusted him because he proved that humans could keep important secrets, could learn alien technologies without trying to weaponize them, and could think in terms of species survival rather than national advantage. They've specifically requested that his successor continue his role as their primary liaison. Marcus looked around the cottage at the sophisticated equipment and the displays showing real-time tracking of approaching alien vessels. I'm a software engineer from Portland. I design mobile apps for small businesses. I don't know anything about species survival or galactic politics. Dr. Mitchell smiled grimly. Your grandfather was a lighthouse keeper who knew how to maintain radio equipment. But he learned. The Keepers have educational protocols for bringing new contacts up to speed quickly. The question is whether you're willing to take on the responsibility. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began sounding from the basement. Dr. Mitchell and her team rushed down the stairs, with Marcus following close behind. The alien communication array was displaying new messages, and the tone of the alerts suggested urgency. They're moving faster than expected, one of Dr. Mitchell's technicians reported. The lead vessel will arrive in 4 hours, not 8. And they're bringing more ships than we anticipated. The main display screen showed a tactical overview of near-Earth space. 7 objects were approaching from different vectors, all converging on Marcus's location. The objects were large, much larger than anything humanity had ever built for space travel. Why here? Marcus asked. Why this lighthouse specifically? Dr. Mitchell was working at one of the control stations, trying to establish communication with the approaching vessels. This location was chosen by the Keepers themselves 60 years ago. Your grandfather's lighthouse sits on one of the planet's most powerful natural electromagnetic anomalies. The cliff rock contains mineral deposits that amplify communication signals and provide what they call dimensional stability for their technology. Marcus didn't understand the technical explanation, but he understood the implications. The aliens hadn't just been monitoring humanity from random locations. They had specifically selected sites with properties that would support their advanced technology. His inheritance wasn't just a lighthouse. It was infrastructure for alien contact that had been decades in the making. The communication array activated with sounds unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. Not quite music, not quite speech, but definitely intentional communication. Dr. Mitchell and her team worked frantically to process the incoming signals, translating them through systems his grandfather had spent years developing. Text began appearing on the main screen. Keeper Fleet Prime has achieved approach vector. Contact Liaison David Chun is requested for final protocol discussions before evaluation begins. Dr. Mitchell typed a response. Liaison David Chun is deceased. Designated successor Marcus Chun is present and ready to proceed. The pause that followed lasted nearly 5 minutes. When the reply came, it carried implications that made everyone in the basement stop what they were doing. Succession was not anticipated. Evaluation protocols require modification. Keeper Fleet will maintain standoff distance until new liaison demonstrates acceptable competency levels. What does that mean? Marcus asked. Dr. Mitchell was reading additional messages that continued to appear on the screen. It means they're not going to land until they're convinced you can handle your grandfather's responsibilities. They want to test you. The testing began immediately. The Keeper's communication system interfaced directly with the basement equipment, presenting Marcus with scenarios that required him to make decisions about humanity's future. The scenarios were complex, involving resource allocation, technology sharing, environmental protection, and conflict resolution on a global scale. Each scenario presented multiple choice options, but the choices weren't simple. They required understanding of long-term consequences, awareness of different cultural perspectives, and the ability to think beyond national or tribal loyalties. Marcus quickly realized that these tests were measuring his capacity to think at a species level. The first scenario involved a situation where alien technology could solve climate change, but only if humanity agreed to restrictions on population growth and resource consumption. Marcus had to decide whether such restrictions were acceptable, who would enforce them, and how they would be implemented fairly across different nations and cultures. The second scenario presented a choice between receiving advanced defensive technology that would protect Earth from external threats, or advanced peaceful technology that would solve poverty and disease but leave humanity vulnerable to alien species with hostile intentions. Each scenario was more complex than the last, and Marcus began to understand why his grandfather had spent 60 years preparing for this responsibility. The decisions involved weighing the survival of human civilization against human freedom, technological advancement against social stability, and short-term benefits against long-term consequences. Dr. Mitchell and her team provided guidance when possible, but the Keepers had made it clear that the decisions had to come from the designated liaison. Marcus was essentially taking an exam that would determine humanity's future, and he had to pass it without knowing what the right answers were. After 4 hours of testing, the basement fell silent. The Keeper's communication system went inactive, and the approaching vessels stopped their advance. They remained in position just beyond the edge of Earth's atmosphere, close enough to intervene quickly but far enough away to avoid panic among the general population. What happens now? Marcus asked. Dr. Mitchell was monitoring communication channels that connected her to government agencies around the world. Now we wait for their evaluation. If they determine that you can adequately represent humanity's interests, they'll proceed with formal contact. If they determine that you cannot, they'll implement what they call guided development protocols. And what does that mean? Dr. Mitchell's expression was grim. It means they'll take direct control of human technological development. They'll prevent us from developing dangerous technologies until they're confident we can use them responsibly. It would mean the end of human independence and the beginning of alien oversight of our entire civilization. Marcus walked to one of the basement windows and looked out at the ocean. The horizon looked normal, but he knew that just beyond his vision, alien vessels were waiting to determine humanity's fate. The decision rested on whether a software engineer who had inherited a lighthouse could convince them that humans were capable of managing their own development. The irony wasn't lost on him. His grandfather had spent 6 decades learning to communicate with alien intelligence, preparing for this exact moment. But The moment had come just as the old man died, leaving the most important conversation in human history to someone who had learned about alien contact only hours before. The communication system reactivated with a different tone than before. The sounds were more complex, more musical, and somehow more respectful than the earlier testing protocols. Text appeared on the main screen. Liaison Marcus Chun has demonstrated acceptable baseline competency for species-level decision-making. Formal evaluation will proceed. Keeper representative will arrive at your location in 2 hours for direct assessment. Dr. Mitchell let out a breath she had apparently been holding for hours. That's the best possible outcome for the initial tests. They're willing to meet with you directly. But, Marcus, you need to understand what this means. You're about to become the first human to have a face-to-face conversation with an alien intelligence. Everything you say and do will influence their decision about humanity's future. Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had inherited more than a lighthouse. He had inherited the role of representing his entire species to beings whose technology and knowledge far exceeded anything humans had achieved. But he had also inherited 60 years of his grandfather's work, knowledge accumulated by Project Beacon, and the support of people who had spent their lives preparing for this moment. He wasn't facing this alone. The next 2 hours would determine whether humanity remained free to choose its own path, or whether it would spend its future under alien guidance. Either way, the conversation would begin at a lighthouse on a cliff, just as his grandfather had always known it would. Marcus spent the remaining time studying his grandfather's notes on keeper culture, psychology, and communication preferences. If he was going to represent humanity, he wanted to do it right. The future of human civilization depended on how well a lighthouse keeper's grandson could speak for his entire species. The keeper ship materialized above the lighthouse without sound or visible propulsion. One moment the sky was empty. The next moment a vessel the size of a city block hovered 200 feet above the beacon tower. Its surface seemed to shift between metallic and transparent, occasionally revealing glimpses of internal structures that followed no human architectural logic. Marcus stood in the lighthouse beacon chamber, watching the ship through equipment his grandfather had modified to track objects that didn't quite exist in normal space. Dr. Mitchell and her team had withdrawn to the cottage, leaving Marcus alone for what the keepers had called direct assessment. The alien communication protocols required that their representative meet with the human liaison without interference from other humans. A column of light descended from the ship to the lighthouse platform. The light had substance, creating what appeared to be a vertical tunnel between the vessel and the beacon chamber. Marcus felt pressure changes in his ears and noticed that the air itself seemed denser, more charged with energy. The keeper representative descended through the light column with fluid grace, arriving in the beacon chamber without apparent effort or technology. Marcus's first impression was of size. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall, with proportions that suggested both strength and delicate precision. Its skin had the color and texture of polished stone, but with an underlying luminescence that suggested internal energy sources. The keeper's face was more human than Marcus had expected, but with features that conveyed intelligence far beyond human norms. Large eyes that seemed to contain depths of knowledge and experience. A mouth capable of human expressions, but somehow more precise in its movements. Most striking were the hands, which had 7 fingers each and moved with mechanical precision even during casual gestures. Marcus Chun, the keeper said, its voice carrying harmonics that resonated in frequencies Marcus could feel as much as hear. I am HFY Thane, primary evaluator for the Keeper Council. Your grandfather David Chun was known to us for 63 years. His loss diminishes both our species. Marcus had rehearsed responses for this moment, but found himself speaking from instinct rather than preparation. Thank you for your patience with my inexperience. I hope to honor the relationship my grandfather built with your people. HFY Thane moved through the beacon chamber with obvious familiarity, examining the equipment with the attention of someone performing maintenance rather than exploring. This facility was constructed to specifications we provided 6 decades ago. Your grandfather's technical skills allowed him to integrate our systems with human technology in ways we had not anticipated. He became more than a liaison. He became a bridge between our species. The Keeper activated several of the monitoring systems with touches that suggested muscle memory. Displays came alive showing views of space that Marcus had never seen before. Not just the local solar system, but distant star systems where other intelligent species were conducting their own technological development. We monitor 47 species in this galactic sector, Axiarch Thane explained. 31 have achieved what we call sustainable technological development. They have learned to balance advancement with wisdom, progress with responsibility. 12 others have required guided development to prevent self-destruction or aggressive expansion. 4 species have been quarantined until they can develop appropriate restraint. Marcus felt a chill as he understood the implications. And humanity? Which category are we in? Axiarch Thane turned to face him directly, and Marcus felt as though those large eyes were examining not just his appearance but his character, his intentions, his capacity for growth. Humanity is unique among the species we have observed. You have developed advanced technology with unprecedented speed, but you have also maintained a diversity of thought and culture that most species lose during rapid advancement. This presents both opportunities and dangers. The Keeper moved to a control station and activated displays that showed Earth from orbit. The view was different from any satellite imagery Marcus had seen. It revealed energy patterns, population flows, and what appeared to be technological infrastructure in ways that made human civilization look both more advanced and more vulnerable than he had ever imagined. Your species has reached a critical threshold, Axiarch Thane continued. Within the next 50 years, you will either develop the wisdom to manage your capabilities responsibly, or you will face technological development that exceeds your social evolution. The outcome will determine not only your species' survival, but your role in the broader galactic community. Marcus studied the displays showing human civilization from an alien perspective. He could see patterns of resource consumption, energy usage, and technological development that painted a picture both impressive and concerning. Humanity had achieved remarkable things in a very short time, but the pace of change was accelerating beyond social and cultural adaptation. My grandfather worked with you for 60 years, Marcus said. What was his assessment of humanity's prospects? Axiarch Thane's expression conveyed what Marcus interpreted as respect mixed with concern. David Chun believed that humanity possessed the capacity for wisdom necessary to manage advanced technology. He cited your species' ability to learn from mistakes, to change course when presented with evidence, and to cooperate across cultural boundaries when facing existential challenges. But he also expressed concerns about your species' tendency towards short-term thinking, tribal competition, and the concentration of technological power in the hands of individuals or groups who lack broader perspective. His final communications suggested he was increasingly worried about humanity's direction. The Keeper activated another display that showed technological development timelines for different human societies. Marcus could see the acceleration of advancement over the past century, with particular spikes in weapons technology, space exploration, and what appeared to be artificial intelligence development. We face a decision regarding humanity, Axiarch Thane said. We can continue passive observation, allowing your species to determine its own path regardless of consequences. We can implement guided development, taking direct control of dangerous technologies until you develop appropriate restraint. Or we can offer cooperative development, sharing advanced technologies with humans who demonstrate the wisdom to use them responsibly. Marcus realized he was being offered choices that would fundamentally change human civilization. What would cooperative development mean? Axiarch Thane touched controls that brought up displays showing technological capabilities that seemed like magic compared to current human science. Energy sources that could power entire continents without environmental impact. Medical technologies that could eliminate disease and extend human lifespan. Transportation systems that could make interstellar travel routine. Material sciences that could solve resource scarcity. The technologies exist to solve most of the challenges your species currently faces, the Keeper explained. Poverty, disease, environmental destruction, resource conflicts. All of these can be addressed with capabilities we have developed over millennia. But such technologies can also be used to create weapons, surveillance systems, and control mechanisms that would end human freedom permanently. Marcus understood the dilemma. Advanced alien technology could solve humanity's problems, but it could also be used by governments, corporations, or individuals to establish permanent dominance over others. The question was whether humans could be trusted with capabilities that far exceeded their current wisdom. How would you determine who could be trusted with such technology? Marcus asked. Axiarch Thane moved to another control station and activated displays that showed detailed profiles of individual humans from around the world. Scientists, leaders, teachers, and ordinary people who had been identified as possessing what the Keepers called expanded consciousness. People who thought beyond immediate self-interest and demonstrated concern for broader consequences. Your grandfather was part of a selection process that has been ongoing for decades, the Keeper explained. We have identified humans in every nation and culture who demonstrate the capacity for species-level thinking. People who understand that technological advancement must be balanced with wisdom, that short-term benefits must be weighed against long-term consequences. Marcus recognized some of the names and faces on the displays. Environmental scientists, peace negotiators, educators, and social reformers. But also some unexpected entries. Business leaders who had prioritized sustainable practices over maximum profit. Politicians who had chosen long-term planning over immediate popularity. Military officers who had chosen de-escalation over tactical advantage. These individuals would form what we call a wisdom council, Axiarch Thane continued. They would receive advanced training in the long-term implications of technological development. They would be given access to technologies that could solve immediate human problems. And they would be responsible for gradually introducing these capabilities to your broader civilization as social wisdom develops to match technological capabilities. The proposal was both exciting and terrifying. Marcus could imagine the benefits of having access to advanced alien technology. Disease could be eliminated, environmental damage could be repaired, resource scarcity could become a thing of the past. But he could also imagine the risks. What if the Wisdom Council made mistakes? What if some members were corrupted by access to unprecedented power? What if other humans rejected alien guidance entirely? What would happen to people who weren't selected for the Wisdom Council? Marcus asked. They would continue their lives as they choose, Axiarch Thane replied. The Council would not govern your species. It would simply ensure that dangerous technologies are not developed or deployed without appropriate safeguards. Most humans would never know that their technological development was being guided. Marcus felt the weight of the decision he was being asked to make. Accept alien guidance, and humanity might solve its greatest challenges, but lose some of its independence. Reject alien guidance, and humanity might destroy itself with its own technological capabilities. There is a third option, Axiarch Thane said, apparently reading Marcus's thoughts. We can withdraw entirely, end all monitoring and contact, allowing your species to develop without any external influence. This would preserve human independence completely, but it would also remove any protection against self-destruction. Marcus looked at the displays showing Earth's technological development, human civilization's growing capabilities, and the approaching crisis points that his grandfather had spent decades monitoring. Humanity was indeed approaching decisions that would determine its long-term survival. Those decisions would be made with or without alien guidance. My grandfather recommended the cooperative development option. Marcus asked. Axiarch Thane's expression conveyed what might have been sadness. David Chen spent his final years struggling with this decision. He saw both the potential benefits and the risks of closer cooperation between our species. His last communication to us indicated that he believed humanity needed guidance, but feared that accepting such guidance might fundamentally change what makes your species unique. The Keeper moved to the central control station and activated a display that showed Marcus himself from multiple angles and perspectives. Biometric data, psychological profiles, and assessments that revealed more about his character and capabilities than he knew about himself. The decision ultimately rests with you, Marcus Chun. As David's chosen successor, you have the authority to determine the nature of future human-keeper relations. Your choice will be respected and implemented regardless of our personal preferences. Marcus realized that the most important decision in human history was being made not by world leaders, military commanders, or brilliant scientists, but by a software engineer who had inherited a lighthouse from his eccentric grandfather. The irony was appropriate, somehow. Humanity's future would be decided by someone who represented its ordinary people rather than its elites. "I need time to consider the options," Marcus said. Axiarch Thane nodded with what appeared to be approval. "Wisdom requires careful consideration. We will maintain our current position while you reach your decision. But be aware that other factors may influence the timeline for this choice." "What other factors?" The Keeper activated displays that showed space beyond Earth's solar system. Other alien vessels, but these clearly belonged to different species than the Keepers. Their ships had aggressive designs and energy signatures that suggested military rather than exploratory purposes. "We are not the only species that monitors developing civilizations," Axiarch Thane explained. "Others have different approaches to managing technological development. Some believe that species like humanity should be controlled before they become threats. Others believe that developing species should be eliminated entirely if they show aggressive tendencies." Marcus felt a new kind of fear as he understood the implications. "You're saying there are aliens who want to destroy humanity?" "We are saying that your species has attracted attention from multiple sources. Some friendly, some neutral, some hostile. Your rapid technological development has made you visible to species who prefer to address potential threats before they become actual problems. We have been protecting you from such contact, but our protection is contingent on our assessment of your species' long-term intentions." The decision had suddenly become more complex. It wasn't just about whether humanity wanted alien guidance. It was about whether humanity wanted protection from aliens who might be far less benevolent than the Keepers. Marcus looked out at the ocean, knowing that alien vessels were positioned just beyond his vision, waiting for a decision that would determine whether humanity retained control of its own destiny or accepted guidance that might save it from both itself and external threats. He had inherited a lighthouse that was supposed to guide ships to safety. Now he had to decide how to guide his entire species through the most dangerous waters in its history. The attack came at dawn, 3 hours after Axiarch Thane had returned to the Keeper vessel to await Marcus's decision. The hostile ships appeared without warning, dropping out of what the monitoring equipment identified as dimensional fold space directly into Earth's atmosphere. They were smaller than the Keeper vessels, but moved with predatory efficiency, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Marcus was in the basement reviewing his grandfather's files when the emergency alarms began sounding throughout the lighthouse. "Dr. Mitchell's voice crackled through the communication system from the cottage. "Marcus, get to the beacon chamber immediately. We have multiple hostile contacts approaching your position." Marcus ran up the stairs 3 at a time, reaching the beacon chamber as the first enemy vessel descended toward the lighthouse. Through the modified viewing equipment, he could see its angular design and the energy weapons that were already charging for an attack. This wasn't a reconnaissance mission or a diplomatic approach. This was an assault. Axiarch Thane materialized in the beacon chamber through the same light transportation system he had used for his earlier visit. But this time his movements carried urgency rather than the careful deliberation of a diplomatic meeting. "The hegemony has decided not to wait for your species' development to conclude," the Keeper said as he moved rapidly between control stations. "They have classified humanity as an immediate threat based on your recent technological advances and have authorized preemptive elimination." Marcus watched in horror as 3 more enemy vessels approached from different directions, their weapons systems powered and ready. "Eliminate? You mean they want to destroy all of humanity?" Axiarch Thane was activating systems that Marcus had never seen operational before. The beacon chamber filled with energy that made the air itself seem to hum with power. "The hegemony's policy is to prevent developing species from reaching technological levels that might threaten established galactic civilizations. They have determined that humanity's aggressive tendencies and rapid advancement make you unacceptable risks." Through the lighthouse windows, Marcus could see energy beams beginning to strike the cliff face below. The attacks weren't random. The hostile aliens were targeting the lighthouse specifically, apparently understanding its importance to human Keeper communications. But they're wrong, Marcus said, steadying himself against a control console as the lighthouse shook from impact. Humanity isn't planning to attack anyone. Most people don't even know that aliens exist. Axiarch Thane continued working at the control stations, his seven-fingered hands moving across interfaces that activated defensive systems Marcus hadn't known existed. The hegemony does not wait for intentions to become actions. They evaluate potential threats and eliminate them before they can develop into actual dangers. From their perspective, any species capable of developing nuclear weapons and space travel represents a future threat that must be addressed. The lighthouse shook again, more violently this time. Through the monitoring equipment, Marcus could see that the Keeper vessels were moving to intercept the attacking ships, but they were outnumbered and appeared to be holding back their full defensive capabilities. "Why aren't your ships destroying them?" Marcus asked. "Because engaging in full military action would violate the very principles we are trying to protect," Axiarch Thane replied. "We are evaluators and guides, not conquerors. If we respond to this attack with overwhelming force, we become no different from the species we oppose." Marcus understood the dilemma, but he also understood that philosophical principles wouldn't matter if the hostile aliens succeeded in their attack. "So what can we do?" Axiarch Thane activated a system that caused the lighthouse beacon itself to begin emitting energy in patterns unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. "Your grandfather spent 60 years preparing this facility for exactly this scenario. The lighthouse is not just a communication station. It is a defensive installation designed to protect Earth from precisely this type of threat." The beacon chamber filled with displays showing tactical information about the attacking vessels. Their positions, weapons capabilities, shield strengths, and apparent weaknesses. Marcus realized his grandfather had been preparing for alien warfare while maintaining the pretense of operating a simple lighthouse. "The defensive systems require human authorization," Axiarch Thane explained. "We cannot activate Earth's protection without permission from the designated human liaison. The weapons that can drive off this attack exist, but only you can authorize their use." Marcus looked at the control station Axiarch Thane indicated. A simple red button marked with his grandfather's handwriting. "Earth Defense Authorization. Use only when humanity is directly threatened." "If I activate this, what happens?" "The lighthouse becomes the command center for a planetary defense network that has been installed over the past 6 decades. Similar facilities at lighthouses, observatories, and communication installations around the world will coordinate a defense that can drive off the hegemony attack without causing permanent damage to their vessels." Marcus hesitated. Authorizing planetary defense systems would reveal to the world that humanity had been preparing for alien warfare. It would end any pretense that contact with alien species was peaceful exploration rather than potential conflict. It would fundamentally change how humans understood their place in the galaxy. But through the windows, he could see energy weapons striking closer to the lighthouse with each attack. The hostile aliens were trying to eliminate Earth's capacity to defend itself, and they were succeeding. If he didn't act, the conversation about humanity's future would become irrelevant because humanity wouldn't have a future. Marcus pressed the authorization button. Immediately, the lighthouse beacon transformed into something that looked more like a weapon than a navigation aid. Energy coursed through systems that had been hidden within the lighthouse structure for decades. Around the world, other facilities began activating, creating a defensive network that had been invisible to human governments but ready for exactly this type of emergency. The response was swift and overwhelming. Energy beams from the lighthouse and other facilities struck the attacking vessels with precision that disabled their weapons without destroying their ships. The hostile aliens found themselves facing defensive capabilities they hadn't expected and clearly hadn't prepared for. But the real surprise came when additional Keeper vessels appeared from dimensional fold space, surrounding the hegemony ships with superior numbers and superior technology. Marcus realized that the defensive system had been designed not just to protect Earth, but to call for reinforcement from Keeper military forces. "The hegemony will withdraw," Axiarch Thane said as he monitored the tactical displays. "But this attack has changed the parameters of your decision. Humanity is no longer an isolated species considering its options. You are now a civilization under active threat from hostile alien forces. Marcus watched as the hegemony vessels began retreating, their dark hulls disappearing back into dimensional fold space as quickly as they had arrived. The immediate threat was over, but the implications of what had just happened would reshape everything. Other hostile species will follow, Axiarch Thane continued. The hegemony's attack was a test of Earth's defenses and Keeper commitment to protecting your species. They learned that both are stronger than expected, but they also learned that humanity has capabilities that were previously unknown to them. Dr. Mitchell's voice came through the communication system again. Marcus, we're getting reports from beacon stations around the world. The defense network activation has been detected by every major government. Military forces are mobilizing, and political leaders are demanding explanations. The secret is out. Marcus realized that activating Earth's defenses had ended the possibility of keeping alien contact classified. Military leaders around the world had just watched defensive systems they had never seen before protect Earth from an attack by hostile aliens. The conversation about humanity's future would no longer be conducted in secret at a remote lighthouse. It would become a global diplomatic and military crisis. What happens now? Marcus asked. Axiarch Thane moved to the central control station and activated communications with Keeper Command Authority. Marcus could hear voices in the alien language, but the translation system provided a running summary of a conversation that was reshaping interstellar politics. The Keeper Council is implementing emergency protocols, Axiarch Thane explained. The attack on Earth requires immediate response to prevent similar attacks on other developing species. We are calling for a Galactic Council session to address hegemony aggression and establish new protection protocols for vulnerable civilizations. Marcus understood that humanity had just become a cause for interstellar conflict. The attack on Earth wasn't just about eliminating human threats. It was about whether developing species had the right to exist without interference from established galactic powers, and humanity's role in all this. Axiarch Thane turned to face him with an expression that conveyed both respect and concern. Your species has just demonstrated its capacity to defend itself and its willingness to cooperate with protective alien forces. This changes your status from developing species under evaluation to allied civilization under protection. But it also means you are now part of a larger conflict that extends far beyond your solar system. The lighthouse communication equipment began receiving signals from government facilities around the world. Military commands, intelligence agencies, and political leaders were all demanding information about what had just happened. The beacon network that had operated in secret for 6 decades was suddenly the focus of international attention. Dr. Mitchell and her team will coordinate with world governments, Axiarch Thane said. But the primary responsibility still rests with you as the designated liaison. You must now represent humanity not just to the Keepers, but to a galactic community that includes both allies and enemies. Marcus looked at the monitoring equipment showing space around Earth. Keeper vessels maintained protective positions while scanning for additional threats. His grandfather's lighthouse had become the command center for humanity's entry into galactic politics, and Marcus had become humanity's voice in decisions that would affect multiple star systems. I need to understand what I'm getting humanity into, Marcus said. Before I make any more decisions, I need to know exactly what this galactic community is like, and what being part of it will mean for human civilization. Axiarch Thane activated displays that showed star maps encompassing dozens of solar systems, each marked with symbols indicating different alien species, their technological levels, their political alignments, and their attitudes toward developing civilizations like humanity. The galaxy contains 47 intelligent species that have achieved interstellar travel, the Keeper explained. 31 belong to what we call the Cooperative Development Alliance, species that believe in guiding younger civilizations toward responsible technological advancement. 12 belong to the Hegemony, species that believe in controlling or eliminating potential threats before they become actual dangers. 4 species remain neutral, preferring isolation to involvement in interstellar politics. Marcus studied the star map, trying to comprehend the scope of what his species was being invited to join, and if humanity accepts alliance with the Cooperative Development Alliance. You would receive protection from hegemony aggression, access to technologies that could solve your major social and environmental problems, and guidance in developing your own interstellar capabilities. But you would also be expected to contribute to the defense of other developing species and to follow guidelines for responsible technological development. The alternative was becoming increasingly clear. Humanity could remain isolated and vulnerable, facing future attacks from hostile aliens without protection or support. Or it could join an interstellar alliance that would provide security and advancement in exchange for accepting limitations on its technological development. But Marcus was beginning to understand that the choice was no longer his alone to make. The attack on Earth had made humanity's existence visible to every major power in the galaxy. Government leaders around the world would demand involvement in any decisions about humanity's future. The conversation that had started between Marcus and Axiarch Thane would have to expand to include every nation on Earth. "I need to speak with world leaders before making any commitments," Marcus said. Axiarch Thane nodded with apparent approval. "Wisdom requires consultation with those who will be affected by major decisions. We will maintain Earth's protection while you conduct necessary discussions with your species leadership." The lighthouse beacon chamber fell silent for the first time in hours, but Marcus knew the quiet was temporary. He had just become humanity's representative to an interstellar community that could offer unprecedented opportunities or unprecedented threats. His grandfather's lighthouse had guided ships to safety for over a century. Now it would guide humanity through the most important navigation challenge in its history. 6 months after the attack on the lighthouse, Marcus stood in the same beacon chamber where he had first met Axiarch Thane, but everything had changed. The room now served as the primary communication center for the Earth diplomatic mission, connecting world leaders with representatives from 31 alien civilizations. The simple lighthouse had become the most important building on the planet. The negotiations had been unlike anything in human history. Every nation on Earth had demanded representation in talks that would determine humanity's relationship with galactic civilization. The United Nations had created a special council for interstellar affairs. Military leaders had struggled to understand defensive technologies that exceeded their most advanced weapons. Scientists had worked frantically to comprehend alien technologies that could revolutionize every field of human knowledge. But the most challenging negotiations had been between humans themselves. Different nations had different ideas about what humanity should accept from alien allies and what it should reject to maintain independence. Some leaders wanted immediate access to alien technology regardless of restrictions. Others wanted to reject all alien contact to preserve human autonomy. Finding consensus among 8 billion humans had proven more difficult than communicating with aliens. Marcus had spent those 6 months learning to speak for a species that couldn't agree on what it wanted. He had traveled to every continent, meeting with heads of state, military commanders, religious leaders, and representatives of every major human culture. His role as alien liaison had evolved into something between ambassador and mediator, helping humanity understand its options while helping aliens understand human diversity. Today would mark the conclusion of those negotiations. The Galactic Council had agreed to humanity's request for a trial membership in the Cooperative Development Alliance. For 5 years, Earth would receive protection from hostile aliens and limited access to alien technology while demonstrating its commitment to responsible development. If humanity proved capable of managing advanced capabilities without threatening other species, it would be offered full alliance membership. Axiarch Thane materialized in the beacon chamber through the transportation system that had become routine over the past months. The Keeper had become not just an alien contact, but something approaching a friend, patiently explaining galactic politics and helping Marcus navigate the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. "The Council has reached final consensus," Thane announced. "Humanity's trial membership has been approved by 30 of 31 alliance species." The Meridian Collective abstained but did not oppose the decision. Marcus felt relief mixed with apprehension. "And the terms we negotiated?" "Accepted in full," Thane confirmed. "Earth will receive protection from hegemony aggression and access to medical technologies that can eliminate most human diseases. Environmental restoration technologies will be provided to address climate change and pollution. Energy technologies will be shared to replace fossil fuel dependence. Marcus nodded, reviewing the terms that had been debated for months. The alien technologies would solve humanity's most pressing problems, but under carefully controlled conditions. The technologies would be administered by the Wisdom Council his grandfather had helped select, ensuring they were used responsibly rather than being weaponized or monopolized by particular nations or corporations. And the restrictions? Human space travel will be limited to your solar system until you develop mature interstellar policies, Thane continued. Weapons technology will be monitored to prevent development of planet-killing capabilities. Artificial intelligence development will be guided to prevent the emergence of uncontrolled machine consciousness. The restrictions had been the most controversial aspect of the negotiations. Many humans resented the idea that alien overseers would limit human technological development. But Marcus had come to understand that such restrictions were necessary to prevent humanity from accidentally creating technologies that could threaten galactic stability. The Wisdom Council is prepared to assume its responsibilities? Thane asked. Marcus activated displays showing the global network that had emerged from his grandfather's hidden project. Instead of one lighthouse monitoring alien signals, there were now 47 facilities around the world staffed by humans who had been selected for their demonstrated wisdom and commitment to long-term thinking. Scientists, educators, and leaders who understood that technological advancement must be balanced with social development. Dr. Sarah Mitchell will coordinate the council from the primary facility here, Marcus explained. Regional coordinators will oversee technology implementation in different areas of the world. Everything will be transparent to world governments. But the council will maintain independence to prevent any single nation from controlling alien technologies. Thane moved to the central control station and activated the communication system that would connect Earth to the galactic network permanently rather than temporarily. There is one final matter to address: the position of Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Council. Marcus had expected this moment, but still felt unprepared for it. You're offering me a permanent position representing humanity to alien civilizations. The Council has been impressed by your performance during these negotiations, Thane replied. You have demonstrated the ability to think beyond immediate human concerns while still advocating effectively for your species' interests. Most importantly, you have shown that you can facilitate communication between very different types of consciousness. Marcus looked around the beacon chamber that had become the center of humanity's entry into galactic civilization. 6 months ago, he had been a software engineer who designed mobile apps. Now he was being offered a position that would make him humanity's voice in decisions affecting multiple star systems. What would the position involve? Thane activated displays showing the Galactic Council chambers on a space station that orbited a neutron star in a distant system. Representatives from dozens of alien species gathered to address interstellar disputes, coordinate responses to threats, and guide the development of younger civilizations. You would spend half your time at the council station, participating in discussions that affect galactic policy, Thane explained. The other half would be spent on Earth, helping humanity adapt to its new role in the galactic community. You would be the primary liaison between human and alien consciousness for as long as your species requires such representation. Marcus understood the magnitude of what was being offered. He would become not just Earth's ambassador to alien civilizations, but humanity's guide in learning to think on galactic scales. His decisions would affect not just his own species, but the development of other civilizations that were just beginning to emerge into interstellar awareness. But he also understood the personal cost. Accepting the position would mean leaving behind any possibility of a normal human life. He would spend decades traveling between Earth and alien space stations, living between human and alien cultures, never fully belonging to either. I need to consider this carefully, Marcus said. Of course, Thane replied. But be aware that this opportunity may not be available indefinitely. The Council typically prefers to work with representatives who have been involved in initial contact rather than appointed later by government processes. Your unique experience as both David Chen's successor and the coordinator of humanity's alliance negotiations makes you particularly valuable. Marcus walked to the lighthouse windows and looked out at the ocean that had remained unchanged despite everything that had happened. The same waves, the same horizon, the same birds. But, beyond that horizon, alien vessels maintained protective positions around Earth. And, beyond those vessels, an entire galaxy of intelligent species had begun to regard humanity as a potential partner rather than a potential threat. The lighthouse beam had once guided ships to safety through dangerous waters. Now it was guiding an entire species through challenges that would determine its place in the universe. Marcus's grandfather had spent 60 years preparing for humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. That contact had led to alliance, protection, and opportunities beyond anything the old man could have imagined. But it had also led to responsibilities that no human had ever faced before. "There's something else you should know," Thane said, moving to activate a different set of displays. "The hegemony has not abandoned its opposition to human development. Their attack on this lighthouse was only the first phase of a longer campaign to eliminate species they consider threatening." The displays showed intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Hegemony forces were building military capabilities and forming alliances with species that shared their philosophy of preemptive threat elimination. The protection Earth had received was part of a larger conflict that could determine whether developing species would be allowed to exist independently or would be controlled by established galactic powers. Humanity's role in this conflict could be significant, Thane continued. Your species' rapid technological development and cultural diversity make you valuable allies in opposing hegemony expansion. But participating in this conflict would require accepting even greater responsibilities. Marcus realized that Earth's trial membership in the Cooperative Development Alliance was not just about receiving alien protection and technology. It was about choosing sides in a galactic conflict between very different philosophies of how intelligent species should relate to each other. If humanity accepts full alliance membership after the trial period, you would be expected to contribute to the defense of other developing species facing hegemony threats, Thane replied. Human creativity and adaptability have already proven valuable in developing new defensive strategies. Your species could play a crucial role in protecting civilizations that cannot protect themselves. Marcus understood that the choice was no longer just about humanity's development. It was about whether humans would become part of a galactic community dedicated to protecting younger species from aggressive older ones. The lighthouse that had once saved individual ships from dangerous waters would help save entire civilizations from extinction. "I'll accept the position as Earth's representative," Marcus said. "But I want to establish one condition. Humanity's involvement in galactic affairs must always be subject to human approval. If my species ever decides it wants to withdraw from alien alliances, that choice must be respected." Thane's expression conveyed what Marcus had learned to interpret as approval. The Council has always maintained that alliance membership must be voluntary. No species is compelled to participate beyond its own choosing. Marcus activated the communication system that would formalize Earth's trial membership in the Cooperative Development Alliance. Around the world, the Wisdom Council facilities began implementing the first phase of alien technology integration. Medical technologies that would eliminate diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. Environmental technologies that would begin repairing centuries of damage to Earth's ecosystem. Energy technologies that would provide clean power for human civilization's continued development. But, most importantly, humanity was accepting its place in a galactic community that spanned dozens of star systems and included species with millions of years of accumulated wisdom. The lonely lighthouse on a cliff had become the first step in humanity's journey to join the community of intelligent species. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same beacon chamber, but now he was preparing for his first journey to the Galactic Council Station. Dr. Mitchell had assumed primary responsibility for Earth-based operations, allowing Marcus to focus on representing human interests in interstellar politics. The lighthouse still operated as it had for over a century, guiding ships to safety through dangerous waters. But it also served as the communication hub for humanity's participation in galactic civilization. The beacon that had once warned ships away from dangerous rocks now helped coordinate the defense of multiple star systems against threats that could eliminate entire species. Marcus had inherited a lighthouse from his grandfather, but he had also inherited humanity's role in the galaxy. The old man would have been proud to know that his 60 years of patient preparation had led not just to successful alien contact, but to humanity's acceptance as a valued member of the galactic community. As Marcus prepared to leave Earth for the first time to attend Galactic Council sessions, he looked out at the ocean and thought about all the ships his grandfather's lighthouse had guided to safety. Now it was Marcus's turn to help guide not just ships, but entire civilizations through the dangerous waters of interstellar politics. The beacon beneath the locked door had screamed back when humanity knocked, but that scream had been the beginning of a conversation that would reshape both human and alien civilization. Marcus's inheritance had become humanity's future, and both were brighter than anyone could have imagined when he first climbed the cliff path to an abandoned lighthouse.